Thank you. Thank y'all, and thank you, Liz. We're going to get a chair up here. While she's doing that, I'll quickly tell the story as to the real truth. I'm not really a rugby player. It's a little less cool than that, but it is ice hockey. So I broke my shin bone, my tibia, playing ice hockey about 2 months ago. I am now retired from playing ice hockey. This was not worth it. Yeah, ice hockey. And it sounds cool still, kind of, until I elaborate on the story. But in fact, it was really because I was out of shape, underprepared. And that's really ultimately what happened here, is being out of shape and underprepared. A little lesson in that. It's also been very humbling. Forgive me, I'm going to look at some notes here. Otherwise, I get really, really ADD, and we'll go all over the place and have to apologize. Oh, yes, thank you. And like Brian asked this morning, as much as I'll talk about technology for a second, I'm not super tech. This is the green button. Okay, very good. So yeah, let's talk a little bit, real quick before I do that. Mike, I just met Mike for the first time today, and this is impressive. And Mike, you have inspired me for a number of years as you've grown your business, and I just can't say enough at how impressed I am. And then I was pleasantly surprised to meet Riley Potoshanik. Wasn't that great? I mean, any of y'all speaking or doing what he's doing at 21, 22 years old? Incredible. I actually have to give props to his father, Jonathan. When I was doing about $400,000 a year in total revenues back in 2011 is when I signed up with Service Autopilot, and I got the opportunity to talk to Jonathan, take him to lunch, and from there he has really mentored me in a lot of ways. He's the closest thing I've had to a mentor, frankly, the last dozen years or so. So it was really cool to be able to meet you, Riley, and get to hear you speak about what's to come. So a little bit about myself. I am EJ McCoy. I'm the co-founder and CEO of 3 of these 4 brands, White Picket Team Management, Chorbie, and Scoop Soldiers. Executive Lawn Care I actually acquired about 10 years ago, rolled it up into what became Chorbie. It wasn't Chorbie yet, and then I spun it back off a few years later. You'll notice here, even from looking at these brands, I am a little bit ADD. And by the way, there's been a lot of talk today about focus and about simplifying your business. And Mike had a great talk about his journey in trying all these different services and the Karens, and that was hilarious, and I loved the play on that. I'm guilty of exactly that, and very aware of it, and I'll mention a little bit through here. Scoop Soldiers, as Liz just mentioned, is it's actually our biggest business by more than double the size of Chorbie, and it does one thing: it scoops poop. And I would argue that that is actually as simple as it gets as far as services go, and that has been what has allowed us to scale quite significantly. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. But again, thank you all for investing in your business and being here. It truly is. I started when I was in my 20s going to conferences like this because I very much so was seeking success and my definition of success. And it has a huge impact. I'll tell you, it absolutely has an impact. Watching YouTube videos, learning from your peers, learning from those that have done it and are doing it alongside you, there's an enormous impact. So talking a little bit further, I mentioned Executive Lawn Care. Executive Lawn Care is a company that I am a partner in and really mainly at this point do management consulting with. But the other 3 companies we run day to day, and that's what White Picket was created to do. So talking a little bit further, hang on. Oh, there we go. Hold on now. Okay. Sorry, like I said, not exactly. By the way, there's a reason this is the title of this is not the sharpest tool. I'm hoping I can provide you guys with some encouragement here. You don't have to be the sharpest tool, and that's a big part of my story. So who started their business mowing lawns? I can kind of see most of the crowd here. Who here didn't come back to mowing yards? How many of you started, right? One more show of hands. How many of you started prior to finishing high school? You were mowing yards. Oh, wow, awesome. that's a little bit about that's a piece of my story. I started out mowing yards. I'll go to the next slide here. I started out mowing yards. That's me. That is not a Skag, by the way. That's a Scott's. And I really loved that lawnmower. I vividly remember it. But this is me just before getting a driver's license, getting into the neighborhood, and mowing yards. I did not like mowing yards. In fact, I hated it, which was kind of partially why it took me so long early on. Again, not the sharpest tool. I didn't go to medical school when I was 18. In fact, I graduated a year early from high school, not because I was so smart, but because I just had to get out of there. I was not a very good student when it comes to that sort of education. And the reason I differentiate that is because it is very important to become and to train yourself to become a student. And again, the beauty in that is YouTube these days. You don't need a college degree. You don't need formal education. YouTube can do it with you. But one of the things I have going for me and always have had going for me is ambition. I have not lacked ambition, and there's a lot to be said in my experience with how far that can take you. Wow, like I said. So a little bit more about my brands. I mentioned a minute ago, Chorbie was established back in 2019. It actually was really where I started in 2006 as 21 years old. I started mowing yards. It was Emerald Lawn and Landscaping. In 2016, that's not on this chart here, but I became weed extinguishers because I was following that rule of thumb that I wanted to focus in simple services and focus on just one service. And then, Mike's talk earlier, I got into those 7 and 8 and 9 years, and I got bored. I absolutely related to that talk today because I did get bored. And as I got bored, I created a monster, which is Chorbie. And truly, it is a monster. We offer everything from lawn mowing, which is still our bread and butter. At Chorbie, we mow around 3,000 lawns a week. We also treat approximately 800 or 900 lawns a week with fertilization and weed control. That is still Chorbie's 2 largest services. We offer shrub trimming. We offer tree trimming. We have arborists on staff. We offer irrigation. We offer Christmas lights. This year, we started plumbing. We do pools. We do pest control. And that is what I joke that Chorbie's a mess. And the reason it's a mess is exactly doing the opposite of what everybody else has taught here today, even though everybody is right that's talked here today as far as simplifying your service lines. I have my work cut out for me when it comes to Chorbie. It's a $7 million a year business, and it does not grow nearly as fast as Scoop Soldiers does. It historically has not. Scoop Soldiers was started in 2010. We began to franchise in 2019. Today we've got, I think, just under 40 total territories and about 15 franchisees. Here in the next 6 months, we're on a major push to basically franchise out our corporate-owned locations, which are about 12 in about 12 different states. So in the next 6 months, we'll have just under 100 territories with Scoop Soldiers. But again, there's absolutely, I cannot stress enough, there is something to be said about the ability to scale and fast when you're focused. Chorbie's kind of like I compare it to Amazon in a lot of ways in the sense that, Jeff Bezos started out with books, and he got really ADD, kind of like I did with Chorbie, and what that did is that made him lose money for like 20 plus years, and frankly, he'd probably still be losing money if it wasn't for Amazon Web Services, and that's Chorbie, and that's why I don't speak negatively when I say it's a challenge. I'm aware of it, but it is a lesson. It's a lesson to take. And again, as you'll see here, I'll do $20+ million in revenue this year, and by no means am I anything special. And that's the one thing, if you can take away from this talk here the next 20 minutes or so, it just takes ambition. You've got to constantly be growing. You've got to constantly be focusing on your team. And so I want to talk a little further on that. I've heard others talk about the American dream today, and I strongly believe strongly, I'm passionate about the concept that in America today, you have more opportunity than ever before, and I don't mean ever before in American history. Honestly, I mean in human history. I love history. I love all aspects of history. And when you go back and you look at opportunity in world history, there has never been a better time. You know, I also constantly, I love the news, and honestly, it's a guilty pleasure. I wouldn't recommend that, but I love following news and culture and just societal demographics, so to speak. And I'm constantly hearing, I just was reading about it yesterday, about how supposedly we just live in such tough times and such rough times. We all hear that the world's going to hell. Well, honestly, the world's always been going to hell, always. I mean, when was a better time, really? Everybody that talks about how terrible it is now and all that's going on, when was it better? It's never really been great, has it? Like the good old days, were they really that good, or is that just our perspective because we're nostalgic? And so I believe, and I want to provide encouragement, that there has never been a better time in human history for somebody, for the average person, or anybody, to achieve their dreams and to achieve their American dream, and whatever that is for you. For me, like I said, I don't lack ambition. And so for me, it's to the moon, to Mars for that matter. Go Elon Musk. But truly, whatever your ambition is, whatever your dream is, there's never been a better time. And do not let the naysayers say otherwise. It's as good now as it's ever been. And frankly, I'm optimistic. I think technology and the different things that are coming down the line provide further opportunity. And though I intend to frankly dominate all field services, I also believe that there will always be competition. It's not like there's ever going to be one or two companies. Look at restaurants, for example. Restaurants in the 60s and in the 40s and in the 50s and even in the 70s maybe. You had mom and pops. You didn't have many major chains. You had some growing, but you didn't have a lot. You had a lot of mom and pop and local operations. You still have that today, but you also have major multinational restaurant chains. Some of them have one brand, some of them have 20. And that's a little bit about my mindset on that. So I want to talk and spend the rest of the time talking about 3 key attributes that have gotten me to where I'm at. And again, anybody can do it. I'm still on my journey. I don't believe I've made it, so to speak, not even close. We all have our journey, and I'm still very much so in it. But I want to talk about the 3 things that I believe have helped me to this point. And you've heard some common themes today. So in a lot of ways, you're not going to necessarily be, it's going to be said in a lot of different ways. And that's what a lot of the speakers today have talked about is a lot of similar concepts. And it all comes down to mindset. So I start here with having an abundance mindset. And what does having an abundance mindset mean? It can mean a lot of things. It does not mean, well, I'll start with what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean go buy the $100,000 truck of your dreams. That is not an abundance mindset. That's usually unwise. And trust me, I've done it over and over and still do it, frankly, and it's not the greatest use of funds, but it happens to be my passion. But that's not an abundance mindset. An abundance mindset is truly, it's a mindset. It's a mindset of recognizing and believing that you can do more than you think you can do in today, in your current perspective and how you're currently perceiving your business, your situation. Recognizing that there is more to it and you can push probably a lot farther than you think. It's recognizing that that through intentionality, you can invest and you can push more than you realize. I'll use an example. I'll use Scoop Soldiers as we got into franchising in 2019. We launched, we got 3 franchisees really quick, sold 4 territories in the Dallas-Fort Worth area just through our network. It all happened in like 30 days from the time that our franchise disclosure document was complete. And we thought, wow, this is going to be easy. And then it stopped, like that was it. And COVID hit, and for another year and a half, we really didn't add any more franchisees. And so what we did is we went out and we invested. We hired a very expensive, not mid six figures, it's definitely over 6-figure position, and it was a franchise developer. And we didn't realize at the time that over a 2.5-year period, we were going to spend over $1 million developing our franchise. Had I known that, even I would have struggled, and I've historically been pretty good with an abundance mindset. I would have struggled with the concept that I could afford that. But lo and behold, after 2.5 years, as I started really looking at what we had spent, we'd spent over $1 million, and we'd gotten 38 franchise territories. We'd gotten about 15 franchisees, as I mentioned. And had you told me 2.5 years ago when we made this commitment that you're going to spend over $1 million to get to here, I wouldn't have believed I could afford it. But we made it happen because we grinded it out. We made it happen. Now, again, you've got to be careful with this principle and with this mindset. You can't overspend. You have to be very intentional with your plan. But an abundance mindset, I think, is key. It's been very key in mine, in lessons I've learned. I'll also point out, I know there's been a lot of talk. I learned this through faith. And faith in itself, in a lot of ways, is a mindset of abundance. At least it should be in most cases. I kind of told one story. I'll leave the other story. And by the way, you guys can tell I'm not. This is not my normal area. Brian mentioned it. I met Brian this morning, and he was up here a few hours later, and he pointed out that this is not his natural state. This is not my natural state at all. I'm doing this because I truly believe that my story can help each of you or some of you recognize that you can do it. Whatever your dreams, whatever you need or are hoping for your life, you can do it. But it does come with hard work. You know, I look at this slide here, and one of the things I want to say and one of the things I think about here is a comment that I learned from somebody else that's been talked about here, Gary V, and I'd highly recommend you look him up. He's got some really good mindsets. He has the right mindset. But one of the mindsets that I loved that he talked about is everything, he considers everything to be his fault. If I walk out of this room, if I walk down the street here in Louisville, and I'm just walking down, minding my own business, walking down the sidewalk, and a car drives up because they're texting and driving, drives up and hits me, technically it's that car's fault. But at the same time, I operate in the mindset that maybe I shouldn't have taken the risk to walk down the sidewalk. Maybe I shouldn't have left the hotel at that exact moment. You want to have a mindset that you have complete control over your decisions and over your business. Another speaker talked about that today. It's usually you, and that's very true. Whatever problems I've got today, I'm ultimately responsible at the end of the day. Does that make sense? Everybody, makes sense? So moving on to my second principle here is to create your environment. This is probably the most important principle. And this is just another way of saying the power of association matters. The power of association in the team you build around you in your business, but also the power of association in the people you hang out with. Again, I'll mention Brian. He talked earlier. He talked about spouses. And it was recommended to me to not mention this, but I'm going to mention it anyways because he inspired me. Who you marry, if you're single, who you marry matters. Matters a lot. I've been married 14 years. My wife actually helped me with this. I'm going to say a funny story here when I get to a few slides from now about what she told me when I went over this slide. But your relationships very much so matter. I love a quote. I'm going to butcher it, and I don't even know who it's from. But it says something along the lines of, the relationships you create, you're not married to your family. You create your family in a lot of ways. You create the team around you. And that has been instrumental. As I mentioned, I'm not the sharpest tool. I have to have an incredible team around me. This awesome slide presentation, I had two people help me with it. I had Ben, who spoke yesterday, who helped me create this. Poor guy, he didn't get any help, by the way. He created it, and he did fantastic yesterday. But he also helped me create this. And then from there, one of my longtime friends, my VP of Business Administration at White Picket Team Management, he then took it, knowing me for 15 years, he then took it and helped from there. And so creating your environment, building a team around you in knowing your weaknesses
and building the team around you that builds that skill set. And so that's what I've got here, talking about the qualities to look for. Be self-aware. Know what you're good at, and find people, put people around you that can accommodate what you're not good at. Don't try so hard to just be good at everything. You want emotionally mature people around you. You want authentic people around you. And again, I mention this for business, but I also would say it very much so moves to your personal life as well. And so this third principle, I have a funny story to talk about here before I go to the next slide, which is a good quote to talk about finding harmony. But I don't like the word balance, work-life balance. I never really have. Jeff Bezos says it. I said that. Jeff Bezos says it this way. I'm not going to read that. You guys can read that. But Jeff Bezos really is alignment. I've always had this thought, but listening to his book, The Everything Store, and then followed up by Amazon Unbound, it talks about this. And I love this, and I've always thought this, because work-life balance makes it sound like somehow you have to have a trade-off, and I'm not convinced of that. Now, this was the one where I was going over this with my wife, and I took her to lunch last Tuesday. I wanted to practice this. I took her to lunch. I said, we're going to go to lunch. I'm going to take you to, where did I take her? I took her to Double Eagle Steakhouse. I forget the name. Anyway, doesn't matter. So I sit down, and we were going over harmony, and she asked me, she goes, so is your harmony spending 70 hours a week hanging out in your garage office and not with us and the kids? And she said it tongue-in-cheek. She said it joking. I said, absolutely. I said, there's an element of truth to that. I said, do I ever lock the doors and not let the kids in or not let you in? Everybody, y'all are always welcome. I get to work at home. I don't have to go to a 9 to 5 and leave every day. And when I need to, take a kid to soccer practice or take a kid to taekwondo, I'm available. There's harmony in that. But at the same time, I do work a lot. Now, another piece and example of harmony, and this is my harmony. Everybody's got their own balance, their own harmony. But be careful on the work-life balance concept, because it does kind of have this negative connotation that somehow it's either or. It's not either or. It does not have to be, in my experience. It can be both. I lost my train of thought, so I'm going to jump forward here. My circle. My circle starts and always ends with faith. Now, admittedly, I'm not always the strongest with faith. I sometimes struggle with talking about it, but it is where everything ends, as well as family. In fact, I wasn't able to make it here. I was supposed to speak yesterday morning. I wasn't able to make it here yesterday morning because I had a funeral to go to. My wife's grandfather passed away. He was 90 years old. He lived an awesome life. It was as much of a celebration as it was mourning. But I was able to get to that. And then I was able to also make it here. I'll go back to a thought I had that I just remembered that I talking about the people around you. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. We'll stick to this. Hobbies here. Well, I have some hobbies, and hobbies very much so matter to me, but again, they don't necessarily take priority. I was taught when I was 20 going to these different conferences about the concept of vertical alignment and not lining out horizontally your priorities and trying to even them out. But I was taught vertical alignment, where you line out your priorities top to bottom, and really that top priority, maybe it's not the thing you spend the absolute most time on. Unless you're in full-time ministry, it's hard to spend most of your time on faith. But making that the foundational of your business, of your family, and frankly, even with the hobbies that you choose. This is legacy. These, for me, and really when you think about, list out your vertical alignment, list out your priorities, this is your legacy. Even that hobbies. I mean, think about the sports you might play or the interests you might have. Those things are passed on in your legacy. Usually your children and or the people that you have influenced are going to have a similar interest in hobbies. Sports is the best example. I personally am not terribly into sports. My son is not really into sports for that reason. I love business and politics, and so my son tends to be very much so into business, and right now not fully politics, but he loves geographical politics and talking about all different countries and their economic systems, because we're nerds like that. And so even your hobbies can be your legacy, but think of your top 3 or 4 or 5 things in that work-life harmony. Those are your legacy at whatever age you're at. And so in recap, I cannot stress enough the mindset. It is all about your mindset. Wherever you're at, challenge your mindsets, challenge your perspectives. Very much so a key piece to my journey and where I've come from has been the mindsets that I have. I'm by no means perfect. I routinely talk about not being the sharpest tool. I struggled with dyslexia for the longest time. I don't talk about that often because, frankly, I don't like to be painted and put into that box. But it absolutely affects me every day. My team routinely pokes at me, and I love it, it's fun, about how terrible of a speller I am, even with spell check. I mean, sometimes Google doesn't even know what I'm spelling. Like, I sometimes have to go to Google and, like, Google how to spell it, and then sometimes it still can't find it. Chat GPT. For the last 6 months, it's taken me 6 to 8 months to get that right. I keep calling it Chat GTG. Hold on, now I get it. Chat GTP, it's Chat GPT. I can't even get that part correct. But again, it's not about that. It's about being self-aware, putting people within your environment and building your environment that can compensate for your weaknesses, and vice versa. I'm pretty ambitious, so a lot of people lack ambition, especially to the extent that I have. So that's my gift. And so, in recap, thank you all. First off, thank you all for listening to my story. One thing I didn't mention was executive lawn care that much. We spun that off in 2016. I helped manage it through management consulting through White Picket Team Management. We established White Picket back in 2019 to really help put all of our organizations together so that we could have infrastructure and leaders that could operate in all those different businesses, but then that could also eventually go out and help other businesses. And so that was the creation of White Picket in that. And so definitely reach out to us. I'd love to connect. Thank you for listening today. And like I said, you can tell I'm not a natural in any of this, but I'm here to hopefully provide encouragement to each of you that the American dream is real. It takes a certain mindset, especially if you're going to, as a gentleman a few hours ago talked about, if your business is only going to go as far as you're capable. And so if you have desires to go to the moon or to go to Mars, you've got to recognize that you have to constantly be growing. And praise God for YouTube, frankly, and Google, because that has been instrumental in my success, and really just seeking out mentors. And each of you are clearly, there's so much yellow in the room. That's exactly that's why you joined Augusta, most likely, is because you hunger for that growth, you hunger for that mentorship. And the franchise systems and franchising is huge in that. So thank you, appreciate you, and you guys have a great week. Enjoy this conference.